Oh, wow. 2 guitars.
It's actually a lot more than that. I think I've got about 6 at home. I collect guitars more than I play them.
I wanted to ask you about your experience of the change in COVID policy from December 8th, or is it December 7th, when basically...
I thought it was the 8th, but the 7th seems to be... maybe it was midnight on the 7th. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I actually didn't find out until like the 9th or 10th.
Let's just call it... Let's just call it December. In December.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about your own personal experience. Like, did you contract COVID? And how did you notice the community around you reacting, that kind of thing?
Yeah. I did. Everyone I know, except Fernando and his wife, have contracted COVID. Everyone I know.
Fernando didn't get it.
Well, Fernando's run away in his RV to far-flung corners, and possibly he's avoided restaurants and crowds and things, and been. It'll catch him. It'll catch up with him eventually. But yeah, literally, I went from knowing no one on December the 7th or 8th. I knew no one who had caught COVID, to 10 days later not knowing anybody who hasn't. So it was really that big a change.
You know, I heard you say that, and that's exactly my story too. Back home in the U.S., I've called my brothers. I have 3 brothers and my mother, and they all had it over the last 3 years. One of my brothers twice. Yeah. But I literally knew no one, not one person that I knew personally here in China until December. And then, except Bebe, who we just talked to, every single person that I know has contracted it. Actually, wait, maybe my wife's mother and father haven't had it yet. I'm not sure.
My wife's mother and father have. Everyone I know, literally everyone I know, except Fernando and his wife, who are traveling the country in an RV.
So obviously, we've already talked about this in formerly on other media, that there was a period of a few weeks where people were largely at home.
Yeah.
And you got to travel around just after that period. So when did China change from everyone being at home to most people being out?
Okay, we went through 2 different cycles here. There was first of all, there was the opening period. And for a few days, if you went out, you saw a lot less people than normal. And I think what that was people saying, China's now open, I'm not going to go out unless I have to. So, shops were open, people were there, people were moving around, but there was less people. And you arrive at a supermarket and there's no one there to take your temperature. This is strange. It feels unusual. Then it went to a process where I wasn't outside because I caught COVID quite early on. And my wife and I self-isolated for about 14 days, basically until Christmas. Christmas Day was the first day I went out. It was actually the day I was sickest. I was already negative COVID. But Christmas Day in the morning, I woke up feeling really unwell. So the period when I had COVID wasn't that bad. The couple of days after I tested negative, started to feel pretty ropey, pretty bad. And I went out and joined some friends in the evening of Christmas Day for a couple of hours, and that was it, just because it was Christmas Day. Had it not been Christmas Day, I wouldn't have gone out. But there was a period where for about 10 days, I was told the place is deserted. There's nobody out, nobody around. Then people started moving around again. And I've been out, I've been to the shopping centers, I've been to the department stores. I went to Shanghai on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of last week by public transport using the high-speed trains, and packed. Absolutely packed. I've got a photograph of Shanghai Station, Hongqiao Station, and literally there's hardly a seat there. It's standing room only, basically. And the station concourse is huge. It's as big as a football field, football stadium, or bigger, probably several stadiums, and it's packed, literally packed.
Well, so to give context to people listening, watching, how many years have you been living in China now?
18.
And so would you say, based on your experience over those 2 decades living here in China, would you say that things have basically returned to normal? How would you describe it?
Yeah, I'd say things have basically returned to normal. I would say it's a new normal now. But people are traveling. obviously people are traveling. That train I was on was standing room. They literally were standing in the corridors. And that's unusual for a high-speed train, but I know that at Chinese New Year, they do sell more tickets than seats. And so there you go. That's part of the normality of it. I would say that just going shopping, if you just go to the local shops, there's no difference now to what there was. And in fact, for most of the 3 years that we were locked down, we weren't locked down at all. We could go shopping normally. The difference was we had to wear a mask. Most people are still wearing masks. And I think, I'm not certain of this, but I think there's a requirement in some places to wear a mask. But public transport, yes. It was announced several times on the train, please keep your mask on unless you're eating or drinking. And that was fair enough. I'm not sure of the point in that. If you're eating or drinking, you're taking your mask off, and therefore whatever is there is out there. So I think probably the masks are now more of a comfort factor, a reassurance rather than a reliable form of prevention of anything. The fact that literally hundreds of millions of people caught COVID last month probably means that masks are no longer necessary. But there are still several different strains. We can catch it again. So let's minimize that. Keep doing the same things, the precautionary measures, washing our hands, wearing the mask. They're the new normal. But in terms of people going shopping, people getting out, people traveling, that's returned to what I would consider to be normality.
Yeah, I had the same experience here in Beijing. Very much in December, it was very quiet, beyond quiet. In the 10 years that I've lived here, I'd never seen Beijing so quiet. And then I would say somewhere between Christmas and New Year's, it was returned to what I would consider normalcy. I went out New Year's Eve to a place called Wukesong, which is not too far from my home. It's a big party community. And I filmed there. Every single restaurant was packed. Obviously, it's New Year's Eve. There were just tens of thousands of people everywhere, all elated, having a good time, largely still wearing masks. But yeah, it was, Beijing had essentially returned. And now that Chinese New Year's Eve is incumbent, it's a few days. Yes. So I imagine that by the time Chinese New Year's is over, there will be very little difference, except the added fact that many more people will be wearing a mask now than in 2019, which I think is largely voluntary, except in a few cases.
Yeah, there's a school of thought that says that December the 7th, 8th, when they reopened, was the last date that they could A, reopen, and B, get through the wave before C, celebrating Chinese New Year. And I think probably that was a calculated date. It seemed like it came around a little fast without any preemptive warning. It was like one day we were locked down, tomorrow you can open. No, it wasn't even tomorrow you can open, it was today. Now it's all over. And then suddenly, this was really interesting for me because I always find that traveling in China is problematic. You need your passport to get on a train or an intercity bus. You need your passport to check into a hotel. And I find these things quite restrictive. It's a bit of a pain in the butt. You've got to carry a passport. Definitely very bureaucratic. Yeah. But I suddenly found that going into my local train station, I got a car to Guangzhou the day before I was traveling because I had something to do in Guangzhou. And I went to Guangzhou train station and I walked into the station through security and then realized I haven't shown anyone my passport yet. I haven't shown anyone a QR code. It was like much easier. I got into the train. So things were easier. And it was actually a much easier process than it was 3 years ago because the QR code wasn't there. The itinerary code wasn't there because there's two different codes that you have to show when you travel, had to show when you were traveling. And they've both gone now. So there's 2 steps of the queue forming process. So it was actually much easier to get into a train station. Hongqiao Guangzhou railway station was busy. Hongqiao was packed. Hongqiao is the main train station for Shanghai, or one of, there's 2 of them, I think. And it was absolutely packed. So I walked in, I got out of the car, walked in, and literally 3 minutes later was inside the concourse thinking, how did that happen so fast? This hasn't happened in 3 years. So that was one good aspect of it. My wife and I went shopping a few days ago because Chinese New Year. One of the things, it's a little like in the West, we go shopping in the lead up to Christmas, Christmas Eve. In the East, we go shopping in the lead up to Chinese New Year. We didn't do anything special for Christmas. Well, we were sick anyway, but we don't normally do very much for Christmas, except maybe have a few friends around for dinner or go to a friend's house for Christmas lunch, that kind of thing. Every year we have tried to go Chinese New Year shopping to get flowers or plants and the decorations and the things that my wife needs to celebrate Chinese New Year with her family. And I just go along to be the pack horse and carry everything home. So we went to our local market, which is called Sakanshu, and we were there for about 3 or 4 hours, and it was pretty busy. I've been there when it's been busier, but we were smart. We went a week before Chinese New Year rather than the week of Chinese New Year. If I went there today, I'm sure it would be absolutely jam-packed. So it depends on the day that you go. We went there and it was busy, but it wasn't as busy as the last time we went, which was 3 years ago. The last time we went there was 2019.
Thank you so much for your insights, Jerry, of Jerry's Take on China. You can find him on YouTube and on Twitter. Is it still Jerry's Take on China on Twitter as well?
I have 2 Twitter accounts. One of them is Jerry's Take on China. The other one is just Jerry's China. I tried to keep one of them less political, but it doesn't work.
Thank you again.